You got me right? Okay, cool. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. So much for a slow Friday in the summer. Like most Americans, I was surprised by the indictments that the special prosecutor put out today, and we're still working through the full documents. But I want to start by commending Special Prosecutor Mueller for his work to date. 23 indictments, 5 guilty pleas, and now direct evidence of Russian agents interfering in our elections by hacking the Democratic National Committee, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the emails of John Podesta, and interfering in over 20 states' electoral systems. My hope would be that the President and his allies would cease and desist from calling the Mueller investigation a witch hunt. Matter of fact, this morning, we saw something remarkable. The President was questioned in the UK why relations with Russia are in a bad state. And he replied, because of the Mueller investigation. No, Mr. President. The reason why relations with Russia are difficult is because Russia and its agents interfered dramatically in the 2016 elections. So going forward, there should be no one-on-one meeting between this president and Mr. Putin. There needs to be other Americans in the room. Secondly, the president and his team are not willing to make the facts of this indictment a top priority of the meeting in Helsinki, then the summit should be canceled. Next, on the question of election security, the Congress has been working in a bipartisan way to make sure that our election security, our election system is safe in 2018. Matter of fact, we had hearings just this past week. But what we've lacked is any meaningful involvement from the administration in this White House. There needs to be someone designated in the White House to work with the Congress to make sure in a bipartisan way we keep our election systems safe and secure in 2018 and on a going forward basis. And finally, these indictments today further reflect the need for us to have strong alliances. Matter of fact, on Monday, Senator Rubio and I are meeting with parliamentarians from other NATO nations to discuss the Russian engagement in their countries. These tactics are not going away, and we need to have this administration stop calling our allies adversaries and trying to treat our adversaries like friends. It is time for the country to step up in a bipartisan way to make sure that what happened in 2016 doesn't ever happen again.
Senator, what are you concerned about having a one-on-one meeting between President Trump and Putin? What specifically is driving your concern to say they should not meet alone?
I've been concerned for some time that the president's ad hoc style of going into meetings and winging it isn't appropriate, particularly when you're dealing with someone like Vladimir Putin, who's been on the world stage for 20 years, former KGB agent. He will come in with his facts, with maps, and I'm afraid that actually the president could be taken advantage of. Equally important is I want to make sure that other Americans hear that the president makes this issue of Russian interference a priority in the meeting, and it's not something that's simply sloughed off with a quick response from Putin saying he didn't do anything. And that's why if he and his team are not willing to make the subject of this indictment of Russian interference a top priority in the Helsinki meeting, then the meeting should be canceled.
Senator Warner, what about the idea, though, he said at the NATO summit, this might be the easy part, by having these indictments coming down just hours before the meeting with Vladimir Putin, how does that complicate this, even if you disagree with the president and his idea there? I mean, how does that change that meeting?
One of the things that changed the meeting is we now, as if we needed additional facts, the Mueller investigation is not a witch hunt. It is proving time and again evidence of Russian interference in our elections. And as even the Trump intelligence officials have continued to make the claim that Russia will be back. Their value of investment in terms of cost of investment, in terms of interfering in 2016 was pretty darn low. We've seen Russian interference in virtually every other NATO nation in the last few years. So I've been concerned for some time, particularly in the notion that of a one-on-one meeting, that the president might haphazardly raise this issue and then accept a quick denial from Putin. That's why we need to have other Americans in the room, and if they're not willing to make this a priority, the meeting shouldn't go forward.
Senator, Rosenstein said that there's no allegation of any Americans having committed a crime in this indictment. Considering what you've seen in your investigation and what you've heard, do you think that indictments on American citizens could be coming in regards to the hacking of this?
I'm not aware of what the next step of the Mueller investigation will be. I know they've got a lot of tools, frankly, that the Senate Intelligence Committee doesn't have, and they've had a number of guilty pleas and bargains that appeared to be made where folks are working with the government now. And I would expect that Mueller has got more work to do, and there'll be more indictments forthcoming.
Should Trump ask Putin to turn over these 12 Russians?
Listen, I would love to find a way to have these Russian spies get justice. Whether Putin will be willing to turn over those spies, I frankly doubt that.
Senator, the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, said he called this, the indictment today, good news, but he said it's time for the investigation to come to an end, the Mueller investigation, and for Mueller to declare the president, quote, completely innocent. You're also investigating collusion. Do you agree with that?
I agree that what the Mueller investigation and the Senate Intelligence Committee investigation need to do is continue our work until we get all the facts out to the American public. And my hope and prayer is that this president and his allies will, again, cease and desist on calling the Mueller investigation a witch hunt. This is not a witch hunt. This is an investigation into a foreign power interfering in our country's elections, a tactic that Russia has used not only in America, but across most of the NATO nations. And it needs to be treated as a national security threat. And my hope and prayer is that Mueller will finish his job as soon as possible, but finish it when we get all the facts out.
But standing there today, can you say the president is completely innocent?
I'm not making any conclusions about the president.
Senator, how much in the indictment was new information to you and the Senate Intelligence Committee?
But the vast majority was new information, and with this level of specificity, it was a surprise to me. But clearly, as the intelligence community assessment made back in January of 2017, and which was reaffirmed in the last few weeks in a bipartisan way by the whole Senate Intelligence Community, we did know, of course, that Russians hacked into the Democratic National Committee and Democratic aides, that they interfered in our election systems, that they used social media in unprecedented ways, and they did this in an effort to help Trump and hurt Clinton.
Senator Warner, you said that this information surprised you, it was new. Does this recalibrate the investigation you're doing with Senator Burr in any way?
Well, I don't think, to the earlier question, I don't think the Senate Intelligence Committee is going to get a chance to interview these Russian spies. But we're going to continue our counterintelligence investigation, which is to make sure that what happened in 2016 doesn't happen again, and to the best of our ability, figure out whether the Russian efforts had any collusion with the Trump campaign.
But if it's new and you were going on one, say, rabbit hole, and then you find 5 other rabbit holes over here, how does that change what you have to do?
What happens, what is remarkable about Special Prosecutor Mueller's work was the level of specificity to identify the actual Russian spies who specifically interfered in our state's election systems, who hacked into the DNC, who hacked into the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, who hacked into John Podesta's emails. That's pretty good investigation work by Mueller and his team.
A White House spokeswoman responded by saying today's charges include no allegations of knowing involvement by anyone on the campaign and no allegation that the alleged hacking affected the election results. This is consistent with what we've been saying all along. Do you believe that's consistent? Do you believe that there's
I
a
believe
chance
this
that
White House,
unknowingly-
with this White House, this president and his allies, who continue to dismiss the Mueller investigation, my hope would be at this point they cut it out. This investigation needs to conclude. We don't know what the next step or the next indictments from the Mueller team will be, but I got to believe there's more to come. And what is so concerning to me, and I think most Americans, has been the president's cavalier attitude towards this whole incident. And again, one of the reasons why he should not meet with Vladimir Putin one-on-one. There needs to be other Americans in the room to make sure we know what really happens. He needs to make sure as well, if he and his team are not willing to make the facts of this indictment a top priority of the meeting with Putin, then he needs to cancel the Helsinki summit. Well, again, we've seen the results of his ad hoc style. When he went in and met with Kim Jong-un, came out, Kim Jong-un got what he wanted, a photo op. The president tweeted that Americans could rest peacefully because somehow North Korea was going to disarm, and we've seen, the intelligence community said, we've seen no progress on that front.
Do you have any information on what member of Congress or candidate for Congress sought out Russian help in the last election? That's mentioned in the indictment.
Again, we've not read through the whole indictment yet.
Senator, is there any sign of Russian meddling in the 2018 returns that you've seen?
We can, I would simply take the words, I believe it was Dan Coates who said this, is that in public testimony, that he expects the Russians will be back in this election cycle.
He expects, but have you seen any sign that it's actually?
I'm not going to get into specifics, but one of the things that I am very concerned about is the security of our election system for 2018. It's one of the reasons why I raised in the hearings this week, when we've got 3 vendors that control 90% of all of our voter files in terms of the IT systems. You know, we need to have the ability to work with those vendors to make sure they're safe and secure.
Have you seen any evidence yourself, though, that anyone in the Trump campaign did collude with
I'm not.
Russians
You
intentionally?
You've asked me that question 100 times. You can ask me 100 more times. You know, when we finish the investigation, I'll respond to that. But we still got more work to do.
Because I mean, the critics, the White House will say over and over again that there is no evidence of collusion. Are they right?
We have already in the public domain evidence of Russians reaching out to a Trump aide, Mr. Papadopoulos. He's even pled guilty. We have evidence that Russian agents reached out to Donald Trump Jr., resulting in a meeting where there was supposedly the proffer of dirt on Hillary Clinton in a meeting that included the president's son, the president's son-in-law, the president's campaign manager. I mean, I think we're well past the fact that there's plenty of evidence of Russian attempts to reach out to folks involved in the Trump campaign. And again, taking Donald Trump Jr.'s words directly, he thought that was a pretty good idea.
Last question.
I know that you said that the vast majority of today's information is new, but how many of the names in today's indictments had the
Again,
Senate?
I'm not going to get into one of the things about our investigation is we don't get into the specific names of people we are looking into or the specific witnesses.
Okay.
But the specificity of Bob Mueller's work today was great work. This investigation, 23 indictments, 5 guilty pleas, now direct evidence of Russian spies hacking into the DNC, interfering in our state election systems. Already we had evidence of the use of social media. I want the investigation to conclude as soon as possible, but the most important thing is that we get the full story, and that full story gets relayed to the American public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.